Hey everybody. Now we could just work with Iceberg tables directly with SQL and create tables, insert records into them. But when it comes to data engineering, you're typically moving the data from existing data sources into these tables. So you're not moving one record at a time. You're oftentimes moving gigabytes and petabytes of data all in a single movement because you're taking data that already exists and moving them to another system. So how could we do that? Well, here's what we can do. The cool thing about Dremio is that it makes this really easy because you can just basically add the sources of data that you want to bring the data from. So whether it's like other data lakes, different types of databases, data warehouses, all sorts of different things that you can connect to. Okay, so again, I can be connecting to Snowflake, Postgres, Oracle, MySQL, Mongo, SQL Server, lots of different things. I can just connect to that data source and then easily use SQL to turn that into an Iceberg table. So as an example, if we go back to that samples data set that we added, there's this weathers data set that's in there. Okay, so right now it's a CSV file. And maybe we would like to convert that CSV file into an Iceberg table. Well, I can do that pretty easily. Okay, now ideally, the thing about a CSV file is that it's going to be a text file. So that means every column is going to be text. Okay, so basically, I may not necessarily want that. I don't want an Iceberg table where all these numbers are treated as text. So what I can do in Dremio is I can do a little prep work before we convert the table. Okay, and Dremio makes this prep work pretty easy. So I can go over here and start preparing this and say, hey, you know what? I want this to be a number. So I can convert data type and say, hey, you know what? I'm going to want this to be a float. Okay, I hit apply. Okay, and now that's going to be a float. Okay, and I can keep doing that to each of these fields that should be a number, convert data type. Okay, and say, hey, that should be a float. Okay, just keep making these conversions, like this should be a date. So convert data type and say, hey, you know what, that should be a date type. Apply. Okay, and just kind of keep going through that and doing this kind of curation work. So essentially I'm transforming the data without actually transforming the data. I'm not actually changing the underlying data. I'm doing is, you see here, this SQL query is getting more and more complicated, reflecting all these changes. So I can now, again, convert data type here, change that to a float. Okay, and I can just kind of keep doing that. Okay, so now this one will be changed that to, but that's already changed to a float. So let's kind of keep going down here. A few more to go. But again, this is generally a lot easier than a lot of the options you would normally have. I'm not having to write any complex scripts or have to kind of remember exactly every nuance of SQL. Dremio has a lot of UI bits that kind of help making a lot of these types of operations really easy. As you can see here, you can see other things like dropping a column, converting a data type, doing group by aggregations. Lots of this stuff can really be really easy if you're not an SQL expert using Dremio. So again, I'm going to just convert the data type of this, make that also a float. Okay, and then I am going to do one more time. We have one more. Convert data type to number or to float. Cool. So now this all looks the way that I want it. Okay, so all the fields have the right data type. Now what I can do is I can then save this as a view. So that way I can have this version of this data set saved for later. So I will save this as a view. I will save that right here, what's called my home space. And we'll just call this weather curated or something like that. Okay. And the idea is that I want that version to be an Iceberg table. So now all I can do is I can head over here to my SQL editor and use what's called a create table as statement. Create table, and we'll say, hey, Nessie.weather. Okay, and we're going to say as, and then what I do is I just say, hey, I want that table to be the result of this query. So then I can just say, hey, select star from for my home space dot, or I can just drag it over. So I just click over here, weather curated, and just plop that right there. Okay, again, make sure that your context is set, and you want to make sure that when when you in the context that Nessie is set to main. Okay, even if you don't have a context, because I don't have a context right now, if this says something other than main, that could cause issues if you're not intending to do time traveling. Okay, so in this case, I hit here and I can hit run. And now it's going to create that table. Now let's actually try querying the Iceberg version of this table. So let's do select star from Nessie.weather. So when I do that, and see, everything has the right data type. So now not only do I have the Iceberg table, so if I go head over to Minio and refresh, okay, I have the weather table there, but the data is in the right schema, okay? And that makes it pretty easy to go ingest data from CSV files. And to make it even easier, there's a command called copy into, where if you just create the table with the right schema, Dremio will do all the conversions once it ingests the table in there, when you just run queries that look kind of like this. You're saying, hey, copy into that table from this file that I have in some other storage source that I have. Now, another way you can move data over is using insert statements. Okay, so for example, let's say I wanted to insert the first, let's say, only 100 records of that weather data. Okay, and I don't want to erase what's already in there. I don't want to create a new table. I just want to add, because again, you might be, the first time you do this, you do the create table as, because you're going to recreate that table. But in the future, you only want like the new records. So you might do something like, hey, only the new ones. So only records added after a certain date or something like that. And you'd end up with a query that looks kind of like this. Insert into Nessie.weather. Okay. And that should be insert into. And then you would put your queries. So select star from, and again, I'll go back over here and grab that weather curated. And we'll say limit 100. So it's only grabbing like the first 100 records. And I'm saying, so this query is going to just give me the first 100 records of this table. You could do something more complicated where you say, hey, only records that have a created at timestamp as of a certain date, the last time you actually added data. So it only grabs the new records. Okay, you select star. Then that's going to insert the records into there. And if I do that, success. I just added another 100 rows into that. Okay. Cool. And I can do it again. Cool. And again, 100 records being inserted. Okay. So that's different ways that I could, one, create a new table from data that I have and then insert data back from those tables if I only want to insert a certain subsection of that data. But again, Dremio has a lot of other really cool tools that you can use. Another really cool one is a command called merge. Okay, and here what you can do is you can take two tables in case you have a staging table and basically not only insert the records, but update records. So this would be useful when you're doing updates and inserts, also referred to as an upsert. So it would look something like this, where you're saying, hey, I want to merge these two tables whenever the IDs match. When they match, you update. When they don't match, you insert. And that's essentially what this is saying. Okay, again, all in the Dremio docs. But again, these are lots of different ways that allow you to take the data from all the different sources that Dremio can connect to and move them into Iceberg tables, making it really easy to work with Iceberg tables and do data engineering work. And again, any SQL that you see me do in the Dremio UI can then also be automated via the Dremio REST API, via Apache Aeroflight, via ODBC, JDBC, which are different ways to send that SQL to Dremio, which can then be automated via things like cron jobs or using orchestration tools like Airflow to create these really nice automated pipelines. So I'll leave it at that for now, and I'll see you in the next video.